world on my shoulders, for real. Hey,
Dear sports, I love you, but you're just too much sometimes.
There it is right there.
Berghammer with one swing of the bat takes the lead for the Gophers in the bottom of the 7th.
You stress me out, you make me anxious, you make me feel like I have to hide my feelings and my true self behind a hard shell. You make me forget who I am outside of you. I know you are well-intentioned, but sometimes I just need a break from you. Dear sports, I love you, I do, but I'm more than you. I'm more than my performances, I'm more than my accolades, I'm more than my fear of failures. I'm more than an athlete.
I'm an international student, so I moved here to the US in August 2021, and before then I've never been to the US. So I literally traveled all over the Atlantic alone. It was COVID, so I couldn't have anyone with me. And I came here, and it was just so different, a culture shock, like everything was different. And the first couple of weeks was very like a honeymoon. Everything was so fun, the team was amazing, practice was fun. But then a couple of weeks in the semester, I started to slowly feel kind of sad. Lonely, I would say, because I felt that there were no one really here who could understand what I felt and went through. I think when I started to realize that something was wrong was when I didn't recognize myself in me anymore. I remember I looked into the mirror and I didn't see myself. And that was really, really scary.
My dad actually spent 72 days in the hospital battling COVID. 5 weeks on a ventilator in August of this year. So August, September, and part of October, he was in the hospital. So basically after that point, I mean, when someone you love is on the brink of death, literally, it was kind of a downward spiral for me, I would say. I did my best to cope and be up here while my family was in Kansas City, Missouri. Just live my life, and got to the point I couldn't do that anymore, so I went and tried to compete throughout my season, and I actually ended up having to step away from gymnastics and just be there on the sideline because I needed to take care of myself first.
I found myself struggling with it when, probably I would say after each injury I had in college. I'm a kind of person who likes to be around a lot of friends and hang out with my friends and the people I don't know, I found myself becoming interest with. And I found myself kind of separating from them and trying to be alone. And I don't know, I found myself like being very emotional when I get alone. So I was always not trying to be around people because I don't like to bring others down. So I found myself trying to, I don't know, be alone all the time and separate myself from a lot of things and a lot of friends.
I feel like my senior year, I had, actually junior and senior year, I had like weird injuries that happened. They were kind of like fluke mistakes, but like took me out for like a couple months at a time each year. And I was not doing as good, and I kept comparing myself to like freshman and sophomore year because I was like at the top of my game, like I was doing so good. I competed on like everything. So like junior and senior year was really hard because I like had those expectations for myself, and like I felt like my coaches had expectations and the team, and it was really hard living up to those, especially after coming back from an injury and then realizing that like all those little things that you're telling yourself eats away at your confidence and like in your sport. So like I may have been doing okay or average like gymnastics wise, but in my mind I was like, I'm failing.
About 2 years ago, I was talking to my roommates and voicing my concerns about like my feelings and some of the struggles I was going through, and they came up to me and they told me, they're like, hey, you really need to get help, or we're gonna have to go to someone to get help for you. Like, we're kind of nervous with where your thoughts are. So the very next day I reached out to my trainer, who ended up getting me into sports psych. And then I ended up going to the doctors and being diagnosed with depression.
Well, athletes are humans, and y'all are people, and we all are people, so we have all the things that come with life. It might be relationships. We have also school and career planning and transition into school and dealing with grades and academics, and then you have the sport realm, and there's just a lot. As a college student, especially for those that are maybe coming from other states, coming from other parts of the country or other parts of the world, you can all relate to the just human experience that everyone is dealing with.
Being a student athlete in general is so difficult. It's one of the hardest things, honestly, you can do. You have to strive for these extremely high grades to not just maintain eligibility, but you want to do good by your university, but also you have to focus so heavily on your sport as well. You don't just go in there and let your mind wander. When I'm up on the beam, I have to be focused because it's 4 inches wide, it's 4 feet above the ground, so if I'm not focused on what I'm doing, I could really seriously get hurt.
My mental health really affected my practice. My practices were really bad. I couldn't do what I was used to. I cried at many practices. I came in and I just burst out in tears and I couldn't stop. And with hurdles, what I'm doing, it's you really need to be there and focus if you want to do a good race.
I had to have a conversation with my coach this year. She talked to me after the game and she's like, hey, what's going on? You just seemed like you didn't want to be out there. And I was like, I don't want to be here right now. I don't want to be playing. There's so many other things that I have to worry about, and my sport on top of athletics and social life and just my own true happiness was so hard to just control altogether. So
I feel like people forget that we're human beings also, and that student athletes have so much more than just athletics going on. We have our relationships, we have our academics, there's so much more to focus on, and I think people forget that. And it's really important to address because obviously how we're performing, it has to do a lot with our mental health, and if you're not taking care of your mental health, you're not taking care of yourself, and as an athlete, I don't think you'll be performing your best, and I think people need to remember that.
I dedicate everything I do and everything I put my effort into that I don't want to be a failure in life. So yeah, definitely when I first got hurt, immediately I thought, I failed. Everybody expect me to go big things and go to the NBA and whatnot. But now that likely chance of it is going down. So I had more injuries and I was able to sit out and I was able to look at life differently than I did before because I had the time to do it now. And I don't know, I just learned the game from a different perspective now. And I don't know, I made a lot of connections with me being hurt. Everybody knew my story by now. So I most definitely, being hurt got its positives and its, negatives. So I definitely learned a lot while being hurt.
As athletes, we're told to be tough, and you always hear there's no crying in softball. So when you're in a super low place and you're finally told yeah, there is kind of something wrong with you, it's you take a step back and you're okay, it's kind of hard to admit. So I think taking that first step was even hard to just be there's something wrong with me and I need help. So then when I finally was told that I had depression and I needed to focus more on myself and not my sport and all this kind of stuff, I was no way. I feel so weak that I have to rely on other people or a medicine just so I can be happy and live my everyday life normally.
I would say that I found myself hiding it from everyone. I had a lot of guilt and feeling I was ashamed in the beginning because there was nothing really that would make me sad. I had everything I wanted. I came here and I had all these opportunities, but still I was unhappy.
It got really bad to a point, I couldn't perform gymnastically. Getting up and going to class I couldn't do it. I chose to do all my classes online because physically getting up out of the bed in the morning was one of, if I did that, I was happy. Getting myself to go to the gym, it became so difficult, and when you're standing in your room on a Sunday folding your laundry and all of a sudden you end up in tears, it's okay, I can't do this any longer.
Somebody's struggling to know if sports psych or mental health counseling or outside professional help is for them or not, what's a piece of advice you would have to somebody on the fence?
I guess I view it as we're all humans, so we can all benefit from talking to another objective human who's trained in just optimizing well-being. And you think about living till you're 90 or 100, I'm like, I think in the lifespan we can all benefit from that. And so it's in the space of, athletes are really accustomed to using strength and conditioning, nutrition, things that they do regularly every week to maintain strength, maintain flexibility, maintain good grades. Mental well-being is the same thing. We really largely should be thinking about doing things on a weekly basis that's good for our mental well-being and maintaining it, and talking to people, talking to professionals is a great way to do that. We kind of do a whole continuum of services in sports psych, so we would have some athletes that come in for performance stuff, so it might be like working on their mental game, mental skills, and they're coming in actually maybe already doing okay and wanting to be more consistent, wanting to handle nerves better, and wanting to go from kind of good to great in a cliche way. But then we also have athletes that come in wanting just general counseling and guidance on maybe some stress or things that are going on in their life. And then we also have athletes that are coming in sometimes in really dark spots, having a really tough time dealing with maybe more mental health concerns like depression, anxiety, substance use, trauma type spaces. So it really varies, but I give credit to all athletes that are coming in, because almost all the ones that are seeking out sports psych are kind of utilizing resources and thinking, I want help and I want to be better and I want to help myself.
I would say that I'm in a really good place right now. 6 months ago, as I said, I thought that I wouldn't stay. But I had really good friends around me. I had my family, my coach was supporting me, and we worked really, really hard for me to keep fighting and stay here. And I started to go in therapy, and that really changed things.
I think going and talking to sports psych, I've learned it's just a sport, and that's what I'm telling myself. It's just a game, and I've started to rely more on my relationships with my teammates and my coaches, because it's over in a short amount of time. So I'm just sitting here trying to rely on my relationships with the people I have for the rest of my life, compared to a sport that is only here for a short amount of time.
I'm at peace with not playing basketball anymore. I kind of sat down and now I got an idea of what's next with me.
Hearing these stories of these student athletes, it breaks my heart, because you're a person, and so I really feel that I was valued as a person by my coaches and my teammates. If I wouldn't have had the support, I can't tell you how much more I would have spiraled. So it really was crucial for me to know she was gonna be like, that's okay, we're gonna get you back on track. All the doctors I saw, they're all like, what you're doing is more important than gymnastics, so.
What do you have for advice for someone in athletics that's struggling with mental health?
I think to just talk about it. I know that first step was probably the hardest step for me. You can't really do it alone, and people want to help you.
Keep fighting. It's worth it. There are so many things in life that are worth fighting for.
Everybody's life wants to be a novel. You want to have the bestseller. Every book has a good ending, and I know you want your book to have a good ending. Just find a way to push through it, because everything is temporary. It's not your end, but if you keep fighting, you will see the better outcome and have that storybook ending.